What up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Let's Ask Paul. My name is Paul Abernathy, your host for the podcast. Welcome. If you've never been here before, you're in for a treat. We have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of podcasts on all different topics. You can find them all over on our website. You can also find them, generally, they're also in our YouTube channels. But the easiest way to find our podcast is probably to download our free app from our website. Or you can go to www.nechat, exactly how it sounds, nechat.com, and download our app. And you can listen to all of our podcasts directly through the app. No lie, you can. And if you want to submit something to us, then simply go to paulabernathy.com, and that's where you can submit online, no strings attached. You can submit your question to us here, and I will answer it. But you know what? You can also listen to the podcast from there as well. So all of that can be done on that website as well, paulabernathy.com. So welcome to the show. We should have a good one for you. We're going to answer a couple questions, and as always, unless I state otherwise, I'm answering based on the 2020 edition of the National Electrical Code, even though we're rapidly approaching the release of the 2023. And we're going to have a lot of shows trying to introduce and get everybody up to speed. Some people, it may be a little premature, but for other people, it'll be just right. And you want to see what's coming, what's changing, and things like that. So stay tuned for those. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. I don't do a whole lot of videos on YouTube anymore, but I do a lot of podcasts. So it's just one way for you to listen. Obviously, sounds weird listening over on YouTube, but again, you can. Some people use a YouTube app on their phone, and it's just much easier to listen to the podcast using the YouTube app, believe it or not. So many different ways. Of course, our shows are always available on your favorite podcasting platform for listening, whether it's Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Deezer, whatever it is. I'm sure we're on it. Just search for Master the NEC and you will find us. All right, on today's episode, what we're going to look at is, before I do that, we have some neat new swag over at electricianpride.com. Some neat new master electrician and journeyman electrician hats. Show your pride, distinguish yourself amongst your peers. Check that out over at electricianpride.com. You can see them, all different colors you can choose from. They're really nice hats. They're auto hats, so they're really nice, flat brim, but I bend mine to a little bit of an arc. But anyway, neat stuff over there. They are embroidered. They are not press-ons. They are most certainly embroidered hats, and they're wool backing, so they are a nice quality hat. Of course, you're going to pay for a nice quality hat, but I would expect it to last. So give it a shot. Check them out, electricianpride.com. We appreciate everything that you purchase from there. It helps go back into the show. All right, let's get to the first question that we got submitted tonight. The question is, in our region, it is common practice for constructing a swimming pool perimeter grid to first pour concrete out to 24 inches from the inside wall of the pool. Embedded in this concrete is typically reinforcing structural steel, a wire mesh, or a single bare copper wire no smaller than number 8. Okay. Says, my question is, if there is any additional perimeter surface, concrete or whatsoever, out after the 24 inches from the inside wall of the pool to 3 feet, does it still need some sort of structural metal for the equipotential grid? Okay. It says, I'm curious because the code gives no direction on how to build that grid using anything other than the alternate method, and is using the alternate method as long as it had a minimum of a single copper conductor 18 inches to 24 inches out from the inside wall of the pool, then I am not required to have anything else out to 3 feet. I have one other question. Why is the steel walls of a non-conductive vinyl lined pool required to be bonded? They are completely encapsulated. All right. Thank you for that question. The first thing I'll say is it would be awesome if you would go over to our website and subscribe to our monthly subscription. We have a great series in there, 8-part series that I did with me and Vince Delacroce. Then that was on Article 680. And it was a great series. I think there's 8 videos in that series. Well worth the monthly subscription. Or if you want to be a player, then you can do the annual $119, show a little love, and you can get access to that and some grounding and bonding videos as well, and a bunch of other stuff. Hundreds of other videos and podcasts on there, that are exclusive only to monthly and annual subscribers. So check that out over on electricalcodeacademy.com if you want to be a monthly or annual subscriber. All right, let me get back to your question. So you're going to be digging into 680.26b2. You're talking about the perimeter surface. Now, the way you describe it, so let me explain this. So this perimeter surface has to extend, 3 feet horizontally beyond the inside wall of the pool, and it shall include unpaved surfaces. So for those that ask if it was grass around it, yes, you're still going to be putting one of the options for the grid, for the perimeter surface bonding. You're going to be putting it in there. So it applies to both what? Unpaved surfaces and other types of paved surfaces. Okay. So whether it's what are those? Bricks or slabs or the little patio slabs or the little stones or whatever it is, you're going to have this perimeter surface. Okay. So let's kind of look at this. So the way you describe it, you're used to putting in the reinforced structural metal, kind of like a wire mesh. And that is very common, and it's actually the cheapest way to do it. And that adds structural support for the decking material, for the concrete, right? Well, if you have that, then that would be following the allowance in 680.26b2a. That is structural reinforced steel. It doesn't always have to be rebar, although rebar could be it, but that is also considered structural reinforcing steel. It's for the actual decking member, right? So it is structural. And you would put that in, and you would connect that to the conductive pool shell if you have one under B1 of 680.26. Okay. If you have a vinyl lined pool, or you have a fiberglass pool, then you don't have a conductive pool shell, but that doesn't remove you from having to do the perimeter requirement. Okay. You just won't have 4 corners to connect it to. You get me? So you still have to have that perimeter. Now, one of your options is the steel reinforced, the structural reinforced steel, and that you would carry it out 3 feet. And in order to meet the construction of this structural reinforced steel, 680.26b2a ends up sending you to 680.26b1a. And if you look at B1a, this tells you, okay, well, it's unencapsulated structural reinforcing steel bonded together with steel tie wires or the equivalent. Okay, so maybe you have to lay 1 or 2 rows of this, but you need to tie them together. Okay, and that would be okay. And that typically is in the concrete, so it's all connected together and it would be fine. And that's the cheapest way to do it. Now, the other way to do it is to put in a single conductor, as you state, and it would be within 18 inches to 24 inches from the inside wall of the pool. Okay, now if you put that ring around, then you don't have to worry about that space inside of 18, and you don't have to worry about that space outside of 24 out to the 36. It's telling you, put that single conductor around the perimeter. If you have a conductive pool shell, connect it at 4 corners, right? And if you do that, then you're going to be okay. That's going to cover that perimeter. Okay, so you're reading way more into it probably than you should. You get me? This is allowing this applies 3 foot out, but this is allowing you, if it was the structural reinforced steel, then you would have that overlap out 3 feet out. If it's the copper ring, which I'm not a fan of, and I'm not going to get into why, but I'm not a fan of it. But it's very common, and that's what probably most pool companies want to do, is they put that 8 gauge around the perimeter, solid 8, right? And it follows the contour, right? And it has to be installed between 18 to 24 inches. Well, if that's what you install, then that's it. That 3 feet perimeter is considered done. You don't have to do anything else, and you don't have to do anything beyond that to meet this perimeter requirement, okay? And then, of course, in the 2020 code, it added one more method, and this, to me, is the best method. It is more costly, but if you think about it, it's not a whole lot more costly, but it is so much more reliable. And this is using a copper grid. Well, this gives you the construction requirements for this, and it tells you how to make this grid. And it is very much similar to what you would do for the conductive pool shell, right? That you would have to have. If you had a conductive pool shell, but it was encapsulated, for example, rebar, then you still have a conductive pool shell. Now you're going to have to put a copper conductor grid under it, right? So you got to be real careful of how you build your pool. So you're going to get the same instructions. It's the same concept as you would get, but it tells you how to make that grid. It's still 8 gauge solid, and it's going to be arranged. Again, it's going to tell you to arrange it what? It's going to tell you to arrange it and in accordance with 680.26B1B3, right? Which is 12 by 12 inch spacing. So you got 12 by 12 blocks, right? So you're going to have this, and then it tells you that the copper grid shall follow the contour of the perimeter surface, extending 3 feet horizontally beyond the inside wall of the pool. So if you're doing the copper grid, which is 12 by 12 squares, out, it would have to be 3 squares, 12 by 12, that's 3 feet out, all the way around the perimeter. That's a lot of copper, but that is the best. If you want to do the structural reinforcing steel, then it would be 3 feet out all the way around, and that would be like your fencing material you're talking about, your steel fencing in there, your wire mesh. That would be okay too. Now, typically, that's probably going to be in all of your slab. So the question, if you're using that, becomes moot, right? Because that's going to be on all of it anyway, right? So, but if you choose not to go that method and you want to do the copper ring, then yes, it doesn't matter that it's not 3 feet out. You just put that 8 gauge, follow the contour. And if you have a conductive pool shell, connect it in 4 corners and install it around and make sure it's within 18 inches to 24 inches. And also that it is within or under the perimeter surface, 4 to 6 inches. So it sounds like you put it in it. Okay. So at the end of the day, you have options. But if you use the copper ring, no, you don't have to do anything else beyond where you put it between the 18 and 24. You're done. And that's why people love that one. It's not the most effective one. And people say, well, show me the bodies. Well, there was a study that was done, and it was presented during a code panel 17 for 2 full cycles now. It might even be 3. And to me, there was more than enough data that supported that the copper ring sucked and that the copper grid or the cheaper method, which is the reinforced steel mesh, which qualifies, those were better options. So, some people aren't sold on the steel. They say it will corrode over time. Well, if it's encapsulated in the concrete, then, chances are slim. Even though the concrete will stay moisture, it's the lack of oxygen getting to it. But at the end of the day, to me, much more reliable than a single copper wire running around a perimeter, 18 to 24 inches from the inside wall of the pool. I'm just saying. But you do what you got to do. You have 3 options to do that. Okay, so that's how I'm addressing that one. Okay, all right. And the last part you're asking is about what did you say here? The last part about that is, why is the steel walls of a non-conductive vinyl liner pool required to be bonded? It says they are completely encapsulated. Be honest with you, I have never known them to be completely encapsulated. If they're within 5 feet of the pool and they are at the pool and they're metal, then they would be required to be bonded. So all metal within 5 feet of the pool has to be bonded. And so unless there was something that stated otherwise, then I would expect you to bond it, right? So if it is truly encapsulated, the best thing to do is talk to your local AHJ and see how they would address that. But you do have to bond all of the fixed metal parts, and you do have some exception to that. So that was 680.26b7, and it talks about a bunch of different items here. So you know, not all inclusive, but just kind of be aware of that if that's the case, and that's probably why they're requiring you to bond it all together. But I'll be honest with you, I've never seen any encapsulated. I've seen them put in and then dirt backfilled to them. But if they're metal and they're on the outside perimeter and they're where the liner connects to, then that's metal, then I would have to bond it. Now, each one of those probably connect together, so you would only have to bond one part of it because I'm sure they interconnect and bolt together and whatnot. But I don't know that I've ever seen one that was totally encapsulated. I haven't. So anyway, you'd have to talk to your local AHJ on that one. Okay, let's get on to the next question we have submitted. This one comes to me and it says, "Hey, Paul, I've been enjoying your podcast for the last couple of months since I found it. Thank you. 2 quick questions." All right, well, there's never quick questions, okay? They're just questions. So it's going to get over with here. All right, 2. The first one, A, he says, "I live in a large city and often see 3-family houses with 100 amp services. Each of these 3 apartments have 60 amp panels. How can the 3 60 amp panels not exceed the 100 amp rating of the service conductors? There is no overcurrent protected device between the meter and the 60 amp panels." All right, let me answer that question first. Okay, so sounds to me like the way you say it is, it says, "I live in a large city and I often see 3-family homes with 100 amp service." All right, what you see is multifamily dwellings. Okay, you're seeing multifamily dwellings, 3 or more. And typically, they're going to do the individual dwelling units, probably using the optional method, and they're probably going to do the entire service for those 3 or more using the optional method. If they have any sense to them, that's what they'll use, the optional method. And we have to assume that they've done a calculation. So if they've done a calculation, we know what the actual load is on the 3 individual units, and they've sized the conductors for those. Now, the question is, first, can they be 60 amp units? And the answer to that is absolutely they can. Okay, so what you want to look at is 230.79. We'll look at that first. And if you look at 230.79, what you're going to see is a rating of the service disconnecting means. So the 1-family dwelling would be 100 amperes, but we're not talking about a 1-family dwelling. We're talking about a multifamily dwelling. So you're going to be looking at 230.79D. And here it says, "All other installations, the service disconnecting means shall be rated not less than 60 amperes." So each one of these apartments probably have a service disconnect with them, right? Now, if their meter, and you said meter as plural, the meters are outside, as long as the service entrance conductors run exterior to the building, and then they go through into their service disconnect at each one of those individual dwelling units, then they're probably using the allowances under 230.40, exception number 1. And as long as those service entrance conductors stay outside of the building, then at the end of the day, they're going to be what's going to be supplying those 60 amp devices. So they got to have at least an ampacity for 60 amps. Okay. Now you come back to the meter. If the meter gang is being fed from service conductors going up, okay, then that is going to be sized again based on the optional method, but it's going to be based on the number of units, and there's a D rating, I guess you should say, some allowances they get for that. And you just have to follow that in 220.84. We call it the demand factors. And when there's 3 to 5, they get 45% of a demand factor. Okay? So that's probably what was done in the situation that you're looking at. And without the loads and out the values, you don't just take the 60, 60, and 60 and cumulative say, whoa, that's what? 180, then how can that have 100 amp service entry conductors maybe coming down from the point of attachment down to the meters? Now, you have to assume that a load calculation has been done. And I'm going to be honest with you, if you're looking at it and it's existing and it's still there, chances are if you put a load calc on those individual units, they're probably not even putting anywhere near 60 amps, anywhere near it. But I can't comment on it because I'd have to do a load calc and we'd have to look at it, right? So, but that's a multifamily dwelling. The way you say it is that you see 3-family houses. What you're seeing is a multifamily dwelling, and it has 3. And so when you have 3 or more, they're able to use the optional method. And we have to assume that's what they've done because you haven't really given me any more details. But the 60 amps, if there are service entry conductors going out, then that's what it could be. Also, you could have meters that drop down and hit exterior service disconnects grouped in one location. And then from there, be feeding the remote distribution panels in each of the apartment complexes. That would be fine too. Then the grouping would be right. They would all be grouped in the same location. So in that scenario, you're like, okay, well, what requires me to group it? Well, all of those in that location are going to be grouped. And the grouping is all part of Article 230 as well. And so you're saying, well, which part of that is the grouping requirement? Well, the grouping is 230.72. And so obviously 2 to 6 disconnects grouped, that would be fine. And then feeders would be going out to those individual units. But if you're seeing the meter and you say there's nothing but from the meter to those units, then chances are they're using 230.40 exception number 1 to do that. And they're keeping the service entrance conductors outside of the building until they terminate, just penetrate and into the service disconnecting means inside of each of those individual dwelling units. Sounds like that's probably what's going on. And then the next question you have, can you recommend any resource that might be helpful in learning more, specifically multifamily dwellings and their services? Well, bingo. That's what we should have said the first time, because that's what you're talking about, multifamily, not 3-family houses. That's a multifamily dwelling, and that's the difference, right? So resources. Obviously, the best resource I can tell you out there is our Fast Tracks program. We have a module that is specifically dedicated to multifamily dwellings, although the whole program would help you. But there is a specific program in there. No, we don't sell them individually. Sorry, it's part of our Fast Tracks program. Now, the only other advice I can give you is that we have a lot of videos, and we have some on multifamily dwellings that you can go watch over on our monthly subscription. It's $9.99 a month. Get what you need and move on out. Or you can get an annual subscription, $119, and we're always adding new things there, new videos, and you get access to our Wednesday night sessions if you want to join us and get your code on. All of those are the benefits and the perks for being an annual or monthly member. With the monthly, you can cancel at any time. With the annual, once you go, you got to go, and it's, you get access to it for a full year. Then you choose to renew it after the year if you feel like you get value out of it, that type of thing. So anyway, that's the best resources I have for you is what we have for that. I don't really share a lot anymore on YouTube. So as far as the free resources from us, that old saying, if you want quality, you got to pay for it. And so that's what we do. All right. So anyway, there you go. That's what we've got for that question. Hopefully that helped you out, helped answer that question for you. And so let's go on and see if we have another question that we can go on and knock out while we're here. Okay, let's read this thing. It says, Dear Paul, is it true Or did I think I hear what you said on a recent podcast? In the 2023 National Electrical Code, will I have to put GFCI protection on my cooktops, ovens, and ranges? Thanks in advance. Okay. Yeah, you heard that right. And in the 2023 edition, and I remind all the folks out there, I have a free video up on our YouTube channel that goes into the analysis of 210.8 when it comes to the 2023. So make sure you go over to youtube.com/master the NEC and look for that video. Watch it. Because we're going to have more on that. And do me a favor, why don't you subscribe? Because you'll get notifications, click that bell, whatnot, because we do the videos and I like to give some of those things away. And so we've got more upcoming code change videos coming. So go over and watch that, but absolutely. So what's going to happen is 210.8D is going to be very specific. And it's going to require GFCI protection, and it's going to introduce the requirements for cooktops, ranges, ovens. All of those aspects are going to now have to have GFCI protection. Now, obviously, nobody's ever seen a receptacle at those ratings, so it's going to be a circuit breaker. Okay? So does that make the circuit breaker people a little more money than the device people? Yeah, probably. But at the end of the day, you're going to have to do it. Okay, so hopefully that answers your question. And again, go watch that video because it is some great content on what's coming up for the 2023 National Electrical Code. And remember to subscribe because we have more videos coming out soon on the 2023 changes. Till next time, folks, stay safe. God bless.